Hello there and welcome to Scientific Serenity. Everything you hear here is carefully researched and prepared for you. Now, take a deep breath. Let the darkness become gentle. Before we begin, you may notice your body starting to relax. A gentle yawn may arrive. Your breathing may slow. As this story unfolds, your mind will drift naturally towards sleep. By the middle of this journey, rest will come quietly, and when you wake, you may feel calmer, because tonight, you fell asleep through science and learned something most people never will. If you see me as someone from your own family who researches and prepares this knowledge for you, subscribing, liking, and leaving a comment would truly mean a lot to me. And let the story begin. There is a moment in every Martian day when the sky becomes something other than itself. You are standing on the surface of the red planet, watching the sun descend toward the western horizon. Around you, the landscape stretches away in shades of rust and ochre and burnt sienna, the colors that have defined this world in the human imagination for centuries, the colors that give it its name, its identity, its place in the mythology of the solar system. The rocks beneath your feet are red with iron oxide, the same compound that gives rust its color, the same process that stains everything on this planet with a thin coating of oxidation. The dust that coats every surface, that hangs in the thin air, that gets into every crevice of your equipment, is red. The very sky, during the long daylight hours, carries a reddish tint, a pale butterscotch glow that is unlike anything in Earth's experience. Mars is red. That is its story, its brand, its truth. But as the sun sinks lower, as its light begins to travel through more and more of the thin Martian atmosphere, something strange begins to happen. The sky, which has been that consistent butterscotch color throughout the day, starts to change. At first, the change is subtle, almost imperceptible, a slight deepening of the color, a hint of something new at the edge of perception. But as the sun continues its descent, the change becomes unmistakable. The sky does not deepen into orange, then red, then purple as Earth's sky does at sunset. It does not follow the familiar progression that every human child learns, that every poet has celebrated, that every painter has tried to capture. Instead, it does something that seems to violate the very logic of light and color, something that challenges everything you thought you knew about how sunsets should behave. The sky turns blue. Not the deep, saturated blue of an Earth afternoon, the rich cobalt that painters mix with ultramarine, the blue that poets compare to sapphires and distant seas. Not the velvety indigo of twilight, that deep purple blue that precedes the full darkness of night. This is a different blue entirely, a blue that has no counterpart in Earth's skies. It is pale, ghostly, almost translucent. The blue of skimmed milk, the blue of distant ice, the blue of something that should not exist in the sky of a world called the Red Planet. It gathers around the setting sun like a halo, a crown of impossible color that spreads outward as the star sinks lower. It deepens as the sun descends, becoming more intense, more present, more undeniable. And as it spreads, it transforms the entire western sky into a panorama of unearthly cerulean, a dome of pale blue that seems to belong to some other world entirely. And the sun itself, at the center of this blue glow, is white. Pure white, like a star in the blackness of deep space, stripped of the golden warmth it shows from Earth. It hangs above the horizon, cold and brilliant, surrounded by its halo of impossible blue. There is no red in it, no orange, no yellow, just the pure, colorless light of a star seen through a veil of dust that has stolen its warmth and left only its essence. Below it, the red landscape continues unchanged, the rocks and dunes and craters still displaying their familiar rust-colored hues. But the sky above has betrayed them. The sky has turned blue. You stand on the rust-colored ground, your boots sinking slightly into the fine dust that covers everything, and you watch this transformation with a mixture of wonder and disbelief. You knew about this phenomenon before you came. You had read the scientific papers, studied the data from rovers and orbiters, prepared yourself for what you would see. But knowing and experiencing are two different things, and no amount of preparation could have readied you for the actual sight of a blue sunset on Mars. It is beautiful in a way that feels almost wrong, almost transgressive, as if the universe has broken one of its own rules just to show you that the rules were never what you thought they were. The science behind this phenomenon is called Mie scattering, named for the German physicist Gustav Mie, who developed the mathematical theory in the early years of the 20th century. Mie was trying to understand how light interacts with spherical particles, and his equations described something that would prove essential for understanding not just Martian sunsets, but a whole range of phenomena from the color of clouds to the behavior of colloidal suspensions. Unlike the Rayleigh scattering that colors Earth's skies, which depends on particles much smaller than the wavelength of light, like the nitrogen and oxygen molecules that make up our atmosphere, Mie scattering occurs when particles are roughly the same size as the wavelength of the light itself. And the dust particles suspended in Mars's atmosphere are just that, approximately 1 to 2 micrometers across, about the same size as the wavelength of visible light. When sunlight enters the Martian atmosphere, it encounters countless billions of these dust particles, each one a tiny grain of basalt or iron oxide, each one ground from the rocks of this world by billions of years of wind and impact. And each particle acts as a tiny lens, bending and scattering the light that strikes it. But different colors of light are scattered in different directions. Red light, with its longer wavelength of around 700 nanometers, is scattered relatively evenly in all directions. It bounces off the dust particles more or less uniformly, creating the general reddish glow that characterizes the Martian sky during the day. Blue light, with its shorter wavelength of around 470 nanometers, is scattered differently. It is scattered more strongly in the forward direction, toward the direction the light was already traveling, toward the sun itself. During the day, when the sun is high overhead, this forward scattering of blue light means that blue is scattered in all directions as well, just more intensely in some directions than others. The result is the overall butterscotch color, a mixture of all wavelengths, but with the reds and yellows slightly enhanced. But when the sun sinks toward the horizon, everything changes. As the sun sets, its light must pass through more and more atmosphere to reach your eyes. It travels through more dust, more particles, more scattering events. The path length increases dramatically. At sunset, sunlight may travel through 30 or 40 times as much atmosphere as it does at noon. And with each scattering event, more of the blue light is directed forward, toward the sun's position, while the red light continues to scatter in all directions. By the time the light reaches your eyes, the blue has been concentrated around the sun itself, creating a halo of pale azure that grows as the sun descends. The blue is not scattered away as it is on Earth. It is focused, gathered, concentrated into a crown of color around the source of light. And the sun itself, at the center of this blue glow, appears white because its light has been stripped of its color by the dust. All wavelengths have been scattered and scattered again, mixed and remixed, until what reaches your eyes is a balanced blend, a star that has forgotten its golden youth, that shines with the pure, colorless light of old age. It is the same effect that makes the sun appear white from high mountains on Earth, where less atmosphere means less scattering. But here, on Mars, it is the dust that does the work, the dust that transforms golden light into white, that creates a blue halo around a colorless star. You watch as the sun continues its slow descent toward the horizon. The blue halo deepens, spreads, begins to fade at the edges into the darkening peach of the eastern sky. Above you, the sky is already turning black, not the deep blue-black of Earth's twilight, but the true black of space, the absolute darkness that comes when there is almost no atmosphere to scatter any light at all. The first stars are appearing, though the sun is not yet fully set. They shine with a steadiness they never have on Earth, untwinkling, unwavering, through air so thin that it barely disturbs their light. They are points of pure radiance, unblinking eyes watching the last moments of the Martian day. The temperature, already cold, begins its rapid drop toward the nighttime low of -80 degrees Celsius. On Mars, the temperature can swing by more than 100 degrees from day to night, because the thin atmosphere cannot hold heat. During the day at the equator, it might reach a balmy 20 degrees Celsius. Warm enough for a light jacket, warm enough that you could almost imagine spending time here without elaborate protection. But when the sun sets, the heat radiates away into space almost instantly. The thin air provides no insulation, no blanket to hold the warmth of the day. Within hours, the temperature plummets to depths that would freeze the flesh from your bones in seconds, that would crack equipment not designed for such extremes, that would make this world more hostile than almost any other in the solar system. You feel this drop through the insulation of your suit, a gradual deepening of the cold that seeps into your core despite the best technology Earth can provide. It is not the sharp bite of cold on a winter day, not the kind of cold that makes your breath visible and your fingers numb. It is a deeper cold, a more patient cold, a cold that seems to wait for your protection to fail, that seems to know that eventually, inevitably, it will win. But for now, your suit holds, your heaters work, your systems function. For now you are safe, but you cannot look away from the sky. The blue is fading now, retreating toward the horizon as the sun finally disappears behind the distant rocks. For a moment, there is a last flash of cerulean along the edge of the world, a thin line of color that separates the black of the sky from the red of the land. It is like a final farewell, a last gift from the departing sun. Then it is gone. The sun has set. The blue has vanished. And Mars is plunged into night. The stars emerge in their thousands. Without an atmosphere to scatter their light, they burn with a clarity that is almost painful. The constellations are the same as those visible from Earth, the same stars, the same patterns, but they seem different here, more present, more real. The Milky Way stretches across the sky like a river of diamonds, so bright that it casts shadows. Faint shadows, but shadows nonetheless. You can see by starlight on Mars, can make out the shapes of rocks and craters in the glow of 100 billion suns. Your own shadow stretches before you, cast by light that left its sources centuries ago, that traveled across the galaxy to reach this moment. And above you, two moons race across the sky. Phobos, the larger, rises in the west and sets in the east, moving so fast that you can watch it crawl across the stars. It completes a full cycle in just over 4 hours, rising and setting twice in a single Martian night. Its shape is irregular, more potato than sphere, a captured asteroid that has orbited Mars for billions of years. In the starlight, it appears as a dark blot, a moving shadow that eclipses the stars as it passes. Deimos follows more slowly, taking more than 60 hours to cross the sky, appearing almost stationary by comparison. It is smaller than Phobos, less irregular, more like a tiny point of light than a distinct shape. They are not like Earth's moon, warm and golden and comforting, the companion of poets and lovers, the marker of months and tides. They are cold and gray and strange, captured asteroids that circle their planet in hours rather than days, that will one day fall to the surface or fly off into space, that have no romance in them, only the hard facts of orbital mechanics and ancient collisions. You stand in the starlight, watching the moons, feeling the cold seep deeper into your bones. The blue sunset is over. The night has begun. And in the darkness, the landscape of Mars waits to reveal its other secrets. Think about what you have just witnessed. A blue sunset on a red planet, a paradox made real by dust and light and the strange physics of scattering. It is a reminder that the universe does not follow the rules you learned on Earth, that other worlds have other skies, other colors, other ways of being beautiful. On Venus, beneath the perpetual clouds of sulfuric acid, the sun would be barely visible as a dim glow in an orange haze. On Titan, wrapped in its thick atmosphere of nitrogen and methane, the sun would appear as a bright point in a sky the color of peanut butter. On Mars, it is a white star surrounded by blue, a vision that would seem like science fiction if you had not seen it with your own eyes. And you were there to see it. You are the first human to witness a blue sunset on Mars, the first to stand on this rust-colored ground and watch the sky turn cerulean. Others will come after you. Someday, perhaps, there will be cities here, colonies, a civilization. But none of them will be first. That is you. That is this moment. The blue sunset is more than just a curiosity. It is a window into the nature of this world, into the dust that covers everything, into the thin atmosphere that barely protects the surface from the cold of space. It is a reminder that Mars is not Earth, will never be Earth, and that its beauty lies precisely in its otherness. The red planet is not simply a desert version of our home. It is a world with its own rules, its own physics, its own aesthetic. The blue sunset is just the first lesson in understanding that world. As you stand there watching the stars wheel overhead and the two moons pursue their separate paths, you begin to understand something important. The red planet is not simply red. It is blue and black and gray and white, a world of subtle colors and sudden changes, a world that reveals itself slowly to those patient enough to watch. The blue sunset is just the beginning. Beyond it lie black sand dunes and ancient whispers and frozen nights under two moons. Beyond it lie the real secrets of this world, the truths that have waited billions of years for someone to discover them. And you are here to experience them all. The night continues. The stars continue their slow march across the black sky. Phobos has already crossed half the sky, moving steadily toward the eastern horizon where it will set in a few hours. Deimos has barely moved, hanging in the sky like a fixed star. The temperature continues to drop, approaching the nighttime minimum that will make this world even more hostile than it already is. But you are not cold, not really. Your suit protects you, your heaters work, your systems function. You are a bubble of Earth in a Martian landscape, a tiny piece of your home world carried across millions of kilometers of space. And in that bubble, you carry something else as well. The memory of a blue sunset, the image of a white sun surrounded by cerulean, the knowledge that beauty exists even in the most alien places. You will carry that memory with you through the rest of your journey, through the black sand dunes and the ancient whispers and the frozen nights. It will sustain you when the darkness seems too deep, when the cold seems too intense, when the isolation seems too complete. You saw the sky turn blue on Mars. Nothing after that can ever be truly terrible. The blue sunset has ended, but the journey has just begun. There is a place on Mars where the red Earth gives way to something that has no color at all. You have been walking since the blue sunset faded, moving eastward across the rocky plain toward the dunes you saw in the last light. The starlight is enough to guide you. Here, under the thin Martian sky with no atmosphere to scatter their light, the stars shine with a brilliance that would seem impossible from Earth. The Milky Way casts shadows, faint but unmistakable, and you can see the terrain ahead in shades of silver and black. Your boots crunch on the regolith, a mixture of crushed rock and oxidized dust that covers everything, and the sound is wrong, muffled, delayed, as if your feet are touching the ground far away. The landscape around you is classic Martian terrain, rocks scattered across a plain, their shapes softened by eons of wind abrasion, impact craters in various stages of degradation, some sharp and fresh, others nearly erased by the slow work of time. Low hills in the distance, their outlines just visible against the starry sky. It is beautiful in its own way, this desert world, but it is also familiar now. You have seen images of such terrain for years, have studied it through the eyes of rovers and landers, have prepared yourself for this moment. But ahead of you the ground changes. The rocks disappear first. The plain becomes smoother, the scattered boulders giving way to a surface that seems almost groomed. Then the color begins to shift. The red-brown regolith slowly darkens, becoming first a deeper brown, then a dark gray, then something that is almost black. And finally the texture changes. The flat plain gives way to curves, to slopes, to the unmistakable shapes of dunes. You have reached the edge of the black sand sea. The dunes stretch before you like waves frozen in motion, their graceful curves visible even in the dim starlight. They are black, not the friendly black of Earth's volcanic beaches, which are really dark gray or brown when you look closely, but true black, the black of basalt ground to powder, the black of cooled lava shattered by time and wind and impact. They absorb light with an efficiency that is almost frightening, creating pools of deeper darkness within the night. Where the starlight strikes them directly, they show a faint silver sheen along their crests, but their faces remain utterly dark, as if they are holes in the fabric of reality. These are Barkhan dunes, named for their crescent shape, with horns pointing downwind and a gentle slope on the windward side. They form where the wind blows consistently from one direction, where sand is abundant but not too abundant, where the conditions are just right for creating these sculptural forms. On Earth, you can find them in deserts like the Sahara and the Namib, on beaches where the wind blows steadily, even on other planets where similar conditions exist. But never on this scale, never with this purity of form. Here, on Mars, they stretch for hundreds of kilometers, a sea of black sand surrounding the red rock like an ocean around islands. You step onto the sand. Your foot sinks slightly, more than you expected, less than it would on Earth. The lower gravity, only 38% of Earth's, makes every step feel light, buoyant, as if you are walking on the moon. But the sand itself is different too, sharper than Earth's sand, less rounded by water and weather. These grains have been shaped only by wind, by billions of years of saltation, the process by which wind-blown sand bounces across the surface, grinding itself finer and finer with each impact. They are angular, abrasive, nothing you would want to touch with bare skin. Through your suit's gloves, you can feel their sharpness, the way they catch on the fabric, the way they resist your touch. But you are not bare. Your suit protects you as it protects you from everything on this world, from the cold that would freeze your lungs in seconds, from the thin atmosphere that would boil your blood, from the radiation that pours down through the missing ozone layer. You are a bubble of Earth in a Martian landscape, a tiny piece of your home world carried across millions of kilometers of space. And as you walk onto the black sand, you carry Earth with you. The sand crunches under your feet. The sound is strange, delayed, as if the sand itself is reluctant to speak. Sound travels differently here, in air that is only 1% as dense as Earth's. It moves more slowly, about 240 meters per second instead of 340, and it loses energy quickly, especially at higher frequencies. What reaches your ears is a bass-heavy version of reality, a world heard through cotton wool, a soundscape that seems to come from a great distance even when its source is right in front of you. You begin to walk into the dune field. The dunes rise around you, some as tall as 10-story buildings, their crests sharp against the starry sky. The starlight catches their edges, outlining them in silver, but their faces remain utterly black, so black that you cannot see the sand beneath your feet except where your helmet lamp illuminates it. You are walking through a landscape of light and shadow, of silver crests and black faces, of shapes that seem to shift as you move. The wind picks up, a thin whisper that you feel more than hear. It moves across the dunes, carrying fine particles of dust, sculpting and reshaping these black waves with the patience of geological time. On Earth, dunes can move meters per year, driven by winds that blow consistently across deserts and beaches. Here, in the thin atmosphere, they move more slowly, centimeters per year, perhaps millimeters in some places. But they move nonetheless. These dunes are alive, creeping across the surface of Mars like dark glaciers, responding to winds that have blown for billions of years, that will continue to blow for billions more. You stop at the base of a particularly large dune and look up at its crest. The slope is gentle here, perhaps 15 degrees, but it steepens as it rises. Near the top, you can see the sharp line where the windward slope meets the slip face, the steep downward side where sand avalanches in slow motion. It is beautiful, this dune, beautiful in the way that all natural forms are beautiful when they achieve their ideal shape. The wind has sculpted it perfectly, has given it the exact form that physics demands, has made it a monument to the forces that shape this world. You begin to climb. The sand shifts under your feet with each step, sliding downward in small avalanches that make the climb harder than it should be in this low gravity. You sink in up to your ankles, then your calves, pulling your feet out with each step and feeling the sand flow back into the holes you leave behind. It is like walking in deep snow, but heavier, more resistant, more determined to hold you back. But you persist, driven by the need to see, to understand, to experience this place fully. Halfway up the dune, you stop and look back. The plain you crossed is visible in the distance, its rocks catching the starlight, its craters casting long shadows in the low-angle illumination. Beyond it, the horizon curves away, the edge of a world that seems impossibly small after the vastness of Earth. The sky above is black and full of stars, more stars than you have ever seen, stars in colors you never knew existed. Red giants and blue dwarfs, yellow suns like your own, and white-hot stars that would blind you if you looked directly at them. And above it all, the Milky Way, a river of light that stretches from horizon to horizon, so bright that it seems almost solid. But it is the sand that holds your attention. Black sand, made of basalt, made of the same stuff that forms the dark beaches of Iceland and Hawaii, but ground finer, spread wider, shaped into forms that have no equal on Earth. The sand is ancient. Some of these grains have been here since the Noachian period, 4 billion years ago, when Mars had rivers and lakes and possibly even life. They have witnessed the drying of the planet, the loss of its atmosphere, the freezing of its water. They have been blown by winds that never stop, shaped by a climate that never changes, waiting in the darkness for something that never comes. And now you are here, walking on them, disturbing a stillness that has lasted for eons. You resume your climb. The dune grows steeper as you approach the crest, the sand more unstable, the avalanches more frequent. Each step requires effort, concentration, a constant adjustment to the shifting surface. But finally, after what feels like hours but is probably only minutes, you reach the top. The view takes your breath away, and not just because the air is thin. Below you, the slip face drops away steeply, an angle of about 34 degrees. The angle of repose for sand, the steepest slope that can exist before gravity pulls it down. It is a perfect curve, a mathematical line drawn by physics itself, smooth and unbroken from crest to base. Beyond it, more dunes stretch to the horizon, wave after wave of blackness, each one a perfect crescent pointing the same direction. Toward the southwest, toward the prevailing wind that has shaped them for millions of years. The view is impossible, surreal. It is like standing on an ocean of ink, watching waves that never move, frozen in the instant of breaking. The scale is vast beyond comprehension. Dunes that would dwarf any on Earth, spread across a landscape that has no cities, no roads, no signs of human presence. You are the first person to see this. You may be the last. You sit down on the crest of the dune, feeling the sand shift beneath you, adjusting to your weight. The stars wheel overhead. Phobos has risen again, racing across the sky from west to east, its irregular shape visible as a dark blot against the stars. It moves so fast that you can actually see its progress, can watch it cross the sky in real time. Deimos follows more slowly, a point of light that seems almost stationary by comparison. Two moons, neither one like Earth's, small and captured and strange. The wind whispers across the dune, carrying fine particles of dust. You watch as the sand moves, as individual grains are lifted and carried, bouncing down the windward slope and up the lee. The process is called saltation, and it is how dunes move, grains bouncing along the surface, transferring energy to other grains, slowly reshaping the landscape. On Earth, you can watch sand move in real time on a windy day. Here, in the thin atmosphere, the movement is slower, more subtle, visible only in the way the dune's shape changes over years and decades. But you are not here for years. You are here for hours, for a single night under the Martian stars. And in that time, the dune will not move perceptibly. It will remain as it has been for centuries, waiting for winds that will never stop, for changes that will never come. You lie back on the sand. The black grains conform to your body, supporting you in the low gravity. Above you, the stars fill the sky from horizon to horizon, so many that the blackness between them seems almost an afterthought. The Milky Way is a river of light, so bright that you can see its structure, the dark lanes where dust obscures the stars beyond. You are seeing the galaxy as it truly is, without the blurring of a thick atmosphere, without the interference of city lights. You are seeing the universe. The cold seeps through your suit. Even with the best insulation Mars can offer, the cold finds a way. -80 degrees Celsius now and dropping. The sand beneath you is colder still, its black surface radiating heat into space with an efficiency that would surprise anyone used to Earth's insulating soils. You are lying on a surface that has not been warm for billions of years, that will never be warm again. And yet the cold does not feel hostile. It feels simply present, simply there, simply part of this place. And yet you are comfortable in a way. The suit protects you. The low gravity makes you feel light, almost floating. The stars above you are beautiful beyond words. And the black sand around you, this sea of darkness, holds you like nothing on earth ever could. Think about what this sand is made of. Basalt, the most common volcanic rock in the solar system, formed from cooled lava, spread across entire worlds by eruptions that dwarf anything on Earth. On Mars, the basalt is everywhere, covering most of the surface, giving the planet its red color only where it has oxidized, where the iron has rusted in the thin, ancient atmosphere. But here in these dunes, the basalt has not rusted. It is fresh, dark, primal, the original crust of Mars, ground to powder by eons of wind. The black sand is young, geologically speaking. It was formed from volcanic eruptions that occurred only millions of years ago, a blink in Martian time. It was then broken down by impacts and wind, carried across the surface, sorted by size and density, deposited in these dunes. And here it will remain, perhaps, until the next eruption covers it, or until the wind carries it away grain by grain. You run your gloved hand through the sand. The grains are sharp, abrasive, nothing like the rounded sands of Earth's beaches. They catch on the fabric of your glove, cling to it with static electricity, another difference from Earth, where moisture would make them clump. Here, with no water, no humidity, the sand is dry beyond imagination, drier than any desert on Earth. It flows like a liquid when you pour it, but it leaves no residue, no dampness, nothing but the memory of its touch. You sit up and look around. The dunes stretch in every direction, their blackness relieved only by the silver starlight on their crests. There is no sound except the wind, and even that is more vibration than sound, a low-frequency hum that you feel in your chest rather than hear with your ears. This is the silence of Mars, not the absence of sound, but the attenuation of it, the muffling of a world with almost no atmosphere to carry vibrations. And in this silence, in this darkness, on this sea of black sand, you feel something you have never felt before. Not fear, though there is much to fear on this world. Not awe, though awe is appropriate. Something else. Something like belonging. It makes no sense. You are from Earth, from a world of water and air and life, from a place where the ground is soft with organic matter and the sky is blue for reasons that have nothing to do with dust. You have no business feeling at home on a dead planet, under a thin atmosphere, surrounded by black sand and starlight. And yet the feeling persists. A sense that this place, for all its strangeness, is exactly where you should be. Perhaps it is the simplicity. On Mars, there is nothing to distract you from the fundamental facts of existence. The cold, the darkness, the stars. No cities, no traffic, no constant hum of human activity. No notifications, no demands, no endless stream of information that must be processed and responded to. Just you and the sand and the sky. Just the universe revealed in its full glory. Perhaps it is the silence. On Earth, true silence is almost impossible to find. There is always something. The hum of appliances, the distant rumble of traffic, the wind in the trees, the calls of birds or insects. Even in the deepest wilderness, there is the sound of life. But here there is none of that. The wind is too thin to make much sound. The sand moves too slowly to be heard. The only sounds are the sounds you bring with you. Your breathing, your heartbeat, the quiet hum of your suit systems. And in that near silence, you can finally hear yourself think. Or perhaps it is simply the beauty. The black dunes under the starry sky, the two moons racing overhead, the knowledge that you are seeing something that no human has ever seen before. These things have a power that transcends logic, that speaks directly to something deep in the human soul. You are witnessing creation in one of its most extreme forms, and that witnessing changes you. You lie back again watching the stars. Phobos has crossed half the sky now, its shadow racing across the surface far below. Deimos has barely moved. The two moons will meet in the sky later tonight, one fast and one slow, a conjunction that happens regularly in the Martian heavens. You make a mental note to watch for it. The black sand shifts beneath you, adjusting to your weight, holding you in its dark embrace. The wind whispers its thin whisper. The stars continue their slow wheel. And you, for the first time since you arrived on Mars, begin to relax. The journey here was long, months in space crossing the void between worlds. The landing was violent, a descent through thin air that required every skill you possessed. The first days were filled with checklists and procedures, with the business of survival on a hostile world. But now, for this moment, there is nothing to do but lie here and watch the stars. The black sand dunes stretch away into the darkness. The barcons march in endless procession, their crescent shapes pointing downwind, their dark faces absorbing the starlight. They have been here for millions of years. They will be here for millions more. And you, for this brief moment, are part of their story. The wind picks up slightly, sending a thin stream of sand skittering down the dune face. You hear it as a whisper, a sibilant sound that seems to come from everywhere at once. The sand moves in waves, in patterns, in ways that are both random and ordered. It is the signature of chaos, of the complex interactions that shape this world. You close your eyes. Behind your eyelids, the afterimage of the stars lingers, 1,000 points of light imprinted on your vision. You see them even in darkness, even with your eyes closed. They are part of you now, as much as the black sand beneath you, as much as the thin wind above you. This is Mars. This is the Black Sand Sea. This is your place for this moment in the universe. The night continues. The stars continue their wheel. And you, lying on the dark dune, continue to watch. There is a sound on Mars that has not changed for 4 billion years. You are sitting on the crest of a black sand dune, watching the stars wheel slowly overhead. The blue sunset is hours behind you now, the night deep and cold and still. Around you, the Barkhan dunes stretch to the horizon, their dark forms barely visible in the starlight. Phobos has set, and Deimos hangs alone in the sky, a tiny point of light moving slowly among the constellations. The temperature has dropped to -80 degrees Celsius, and the thin wind has died to almost nothing. And in the distance you hear it, a sound so faint, so thin that at first you think you are imagining it. It is the wind. On Earth, wind is a complex sound, the rustle of leaves, the howl around buildings, the whistle through cracks, the roar in the trees. It carries information about the world it moves through, about the obstacles it encounters, about the density of the air itself. A skilled listener can tell from the sound of the wind whether it is blowing through pines or oaks, whether it is passing over water or land, whether a storm is approaching or departing. On Mars, the wind is different. It is thinner, higher-pitched, more like a whisper than a roar. It speaks in frequencies that barely register in human hearing, in pressures that barely move the air. It is the sound of nothing, of air so thin that it carries almost no energy, of molecules so sparse that they barely collide. And yet it is also the sound of something, of a world still active, still dynamic, still shaped by forces that have operated since its formation. You listen. The sound grows slightly louder as a gust passes your position, then fades as it moves on. It rises and falls in cycles that have no pattern you can discern, that follow rules written in the chaotic dynamics of atmosphere and terrain. It is the sound of Mars breathing, of the planet's thin envelope of gas moving in response to temperature and pressure, of the last traces of an atmosphere that was once thick enough to support rivers and lakes and possibly life. The acoustics of Mars are unlike anything on Earth. Sound behaves differently here, in air that is only 1% as dense as Earth's atmosphere. It travels more slowly, about 240 meters per second instead of 340, and it fades more quickly, its energy dissipated by the sparse medium. High frequencies are absorbed first, leaving only the lowest rumbles to travel any distance. The result is a world that sounds muffled, distant, as if heard through a thick blanket. You stand up on the dune crest, turning your head to locate the source of the sound. But on Mars, sound does not come from a direction the way it does on Earth. It seems to come from everywhere at once, diffused by the thin air, reflected by the terrain in ways that confuse the ear. You hear the wind, but you cannot tell where it is blowing. You hear the sand moving, but you cannot tell which dune is shifting. The world is acoustically ambiguous, a place where sound is presence rather than information. This is the ancient whisper of Mars, the sound of a world that has been speaking to itself for billions of years, with no one to listen. You begin to walk again, moving deeper into the dune field. The sand crunches under your boots, but the sound is wrong, delayed, muffled, as if your feet are touching the ground far away. You stamp harder, and the sound that reaches your ears is a dull thump, nothing like the sharp crack it would make on Earth. The thin air simply cannot carry the high frequencies that would give the sound its character. It strips away the detail, leaving only the blunt fact of impact. You stop and clap your gloved hands together. The sound is pathetic, a soft thud that barely registers. You try again harder and get the same result. On Mars, even the loudest sounds are whispers. If you shouted at the top of your lungs, the sound would travel only a few dozen meters before fading into inaudibility. Two people standing 50 meters apart would struggle to hear each other even if they screamed. This has implications beyond the merely curious. It means that communication on Mars would be fundamentally different from communication on Earth. It means that the roar of a rocket engine would reach your ears as a distant rumble, not the deafening blast you would expect. It means that this world, for all its dramatic landscapes, is fundamentally quiet, a place of silence broken only by the faintest whispers. But the silence is not empty. It is filled with sounds that you cannot hear directly, that you can only detect through instruments. The wind, for example, is constantly blowing across the surface, carrying dust and sand, reshaping the dunes. Its pressure variations can be measured, its frequencies analyzed. Converted into audible form, these measurements reveal a complex soundscape, a world of whispers and murmurs, of low-frequency rumbles and high-frequency hisses that never reach human ears. You carry such an instrument with you attached to your suit. It is called an acoustic sensor, and it is designed to do exactly this: to detect the sounds of Mars and translate them into frequencies you can hear. You activate it now, letting it record the vibrations in the thin air and convert them into audio signals that your helmet speakers can reproduce. Through your helmet, Mars begins to speak. The first sound is the wind, a low, continuous rumble that rises and falls with the gusts. It is not the howl of earth wind with its sharp peaks and sudden silences, but something deeper, more primal, like the sound of a distant ocean heard through a wall. It has a rhythm to it, a pulse that seems almost alive, as if the planet itself is breathing. Below it, you hear the sand moving, a soft, sibilant hiss like waves on a beach, but slower, more deliberate, more granular. It is the sound of billions of individual grains rubbing against each other, bouncing across the surface, settling into new arrangements. It is the sound of geology happening in real time, of the landscape slowly reshaping itself under the influence of wind and gravity. And above it all, there is a crackling, a static, a sound like bacon frying in a distant kitchen. This is the sound of dust particles colliding with each other and with your suit, of static electricity building and discharging in the dry air, of the fundamental interactions that define this world. It is the sound of Mars itself, the voice of the planet. You continue walking, listening to the translated sounds. The dunes around you are alive with noise, the whisper of sand sliding down slip faces, the rumble of wind carving new shapes, the crackle of static electricity in the thin air. It is a symphony of a dead world, a music made by forces that have no consciousness, no intent, no awareness of their own beauty. And yet it is beautiful in its own way, beautiful in its complexity, its variety, its endless variation. The physics behind these sounds is fascinating. The low speed of sound on Mars, 240 meters per second compared to Earth's 340, means that sound waves take longer to travel, that echoes return more slowly, that the entire acoustic landscape is stretched out in time. If you shouted across a Martian canyon, your voice would take nearly half again as long to reach the other side, and the echo would return with a similar delay. The world would seem to be moving in slow motion, acoustically speaking. But you do not shout. There is no one to hear you, and the thin air would rob your voice of its power anyway. Instead, you listen to the wind, to the sand, to the subtle sounds of a world that has been silent for eons. You reach the top of a particularly tall dune and stop to look around. The view is the same in every direction. Black sand, starry sky, the distant outline of mountains on the horizon. But the soundscape is different here, more exposed to the wind, more open to the sky. You can hear the air moving past you with a thin, high-pitched whistle that is almost beyond the range of human hearing. It is the sound of the atmosphere itself, of molecules rushing past your ears, of the last traces of gas that cling to this world. Think about what that atmosphere is made of. Carbon dioxide, mostly 95%. Nitrogen, 2.7%. Argon, 1.6%. And traces of oxygen and water vapor, barely enough to measure, barely enough to sustain any form of life we know. This is air that would kill you in seconds if your suit failed, that would freeze your lungs solid, that would leave your body exposed to the vacuum of space. And yet, thin and deadly as it is, it still carries sound. It still whispers. It still speaks. You sit down on the dune crest, letting the sand conform to your body. The translated sounds continue to play through your speakers. The wind, the sand, the crackle of dust. They are hypnotic, meditative, the perfect accompaniment to the starry sky above you. You close your eyes and let them wash over you, these sounds from another world. A new sound joins the mix. A low rhythmic thumping that you feel more than hear. At first you think it is more wind, more sand, more static. But it is different, regular, repeating, with a pattern that seems almost deliberate. You check your instruments and realize what it is. The vibration of your own heartbeat, transmitted through your suit, picked up by the sensitive microphones. Your own body is contributing to the soundscape of Mars, adding its rhythm to the ancient whisper of the planet. You laugh, but the sound is muffled, barely audible even to you. On Mars, even laughter is a whisper. The wind shifts direction and the soundscape changes with it. The low rumble becomes higher pitched as the wind flows over the dune crest, creating turbulence that generates new frequencies. The sand hiss intensifies as more grains are lifted and carried. The crackle of static electricity grows sharper as dust particles rub against each other, building up charges that will eventually discharge in tiny sparks. The entire soundscape shifts, evolves, responds to the changing conditions. You open your eyes and look around. The dunes are still there, black against the stars. The sky is still black, the stars still bright. Nothing has changed visually, but acoustically, everything is different. The wind has shifted, and with it, the voice of Mars has changed. This is the lesson of Martian acoustics. That sound is not separate from the world, not an overlay or an addition, but an integral part of how the world expresses itself. The wind that shapes the dunes also creates the sound of their shaping. The sand that moves also sings of its movement. The dust that coats everything also crackles with the energy of its interactions. Mars is not silent. It is simply speaking in a language that human ears were not designed to hear. But with the right instruments, with the right translations, you can begin to understand that language. You can hear the wind speaking of its journey across the plains. You can hear the sand singing of its slow migration. You can hear the dust crackling with the static electricity that will one day discharge in spectacular sparks. You can hear Mars. A particularly strong gust hits you, and for a moment the sound rises to a howl, still thin, still high-pitched, but unmistakably a howl. It is the voice of a storm, of the kind of windstorm that can engulf entire regions of Mars, that can blot out the sun with dust, that can reshape the landscape in days. This gust is nothing compared to those storms, but it carries their signature, their promise of power. In the sound of this gust, you can hear the potential for something much larger, much more destructive, much more awe-inspiring. The gust passes and the sound returns to its normal whisper. The dune settles, sand grains finding new positions. The static crackle fades, and you are left with the silence, the profound, ancient silence of a world that has been waiting for someone to listen. But it is not truly silent. Even now, with the wind died down and the sand still, your instruments still detect sounds. The creak of your suit as you move, the hum of your life support systems, the thump of your heartbeat. You are part of the soundscape now, whether you want to be or not. You have added your voice to the ancient whisper of Mars. You lie back on the sand, letting it support you. The translated sounds continue to play, a lullaby from a dead world. The wind rises and falls, the sand hisses and crackles, and your own heartbeat adds its steady rhythm to the mix. You are part of the soundscape now, part of the music of Mars. The acoustics of this world have taught you something important. Sound is not just sound, it is information, a way of knowing a place, a means of connection. On Earth, we take sound for granted, surrounded as we are by constant noise, the hum of machines, the chatter of voices, the blare of entertainment, the rumble of traffic. But here, in the thin air of Mars, every sound is precious, every whisper a gift. The wind that would barely register on Earth becomes a symphony here. The sand that would be silent at home becomes a chorus. The world speaks and you are listening. A new sound emerges from the mix, a deep, resonant hum that seems to come from the ground itself. It is lower than anything you have heard so far, lower than the wind, lower than your heartbeat. It vibrates through your body, through the dune, through the very fabric of Mars. You check your instruments and realize what it is. The vibration of the dune itself, the slow creep of sand grains shifting under their own weight. The entire dune is humming, singing at a frequency too low for human ears, but detectable by your instruments and translated into something you can hear. It is the sound of geology, of gravity, of the endless adjustment of matter to the forces that act upon it. You have never heard anything like it. No one on Earth has ever heard anything like it. It is a sound unique to Mars, to this world of low gravity and thin air, to these dunes of black sand that have been shaped by winds for billions of years. It is the sound of the planet itself, and you are here to hear it. The hum continues, steady and deep, a bass note that underlies all the other sounds. It is the foundation of the Martian soundscape, the ground upon which all other sounds are built. It has been here for billions of years, humming away at a frequency that no living thing could ever hear, waiting for someone to come with instruments sensitive enough to detect it, with translators capable of converting it into audible form. You are that someone. You are the first living thing to hear the song of Mars. The night continues. The stars continue their slow wheel. The soundscape continues its endless variation. And you, lying on the black sand dune, continue to listen. The ancient whisper of Mars speaks to you, and you answer with your presence, with your attention, with your willingness to hear. It is enough. It is more than enough. It is everything. There is a moment in every Martian night when the air itself begins to die. You have been lying on the black sand dune for hours, listening to the ancient whisper of the wind, watching the slow wheel of the stars. The cold has been deepening steadily since the sun set, a gradual intensification of the chill that never really leaves this world. At first, it was just a noticeable drop from the daytime high, a cooling that your suit could easily compensate for. But as the hours have passed, the cold has grown more insistent, more penetrating, more absolute. It has seeped through layers of insulation, through the advanced materials of your suit, through the very fabric of your being, until it has become a presence rather than a sensation. And now, in the deepest part of the night, something new is happening. Something that changes not just the temperature, but the very nature of the air around you. Something that transforms the atmosphere itself. The carbon dioxide is freezing. You cannot see it at first. The change is too subtle, too gradual for human senses. The darkness is absolute, broken only by the faint starlight that illuminates the dunes in shades of silver and black. But your instruments detect it, a drop in pressure, a shift in composition, a slow transformation of the atmosphere itself. As the temperature plunges toward minus 125 degrees Celsius, the carbon dioxide that makes up 95% of Mars's air begins to condense, turning from gas to solid, from invisible vapor to frost on the cold ground. You sit up on the dune crest and look around. The starlight is still bright enough to see by, and now you notice something new on the surface of the black sand. A thin coating, pale gray in the dim light, spreading like a stain across the dunes. It is dry ice, carbon dioxide snow, falling from the sky and settling on the sand, transforming the dark landscape into something pale and ghostly. The process is called deposition, the direct transition from gas to solid without passing through a liquid phase. It happens because the temperature has dropped below the frost point of carbon dioxide, which at Martian pressure is about minus 125 degrees Celsius. But the pressure is not constant across the planet, and the temperature varies with elevation and time. So the frost forms in patches, in layers, in patterns that shift and change as the night deepens. Some areas accumulate more frost than others. Some remain bare, their black sand still visible against the growing white. The landscape becomes a mosaic of dark and light, of frozen and unfrozen, of the ongoing transformation of a world. You reach out and touch a patch of frost on the sand beside you. Through your glove, you cannot feel its temperature. The insulation is too good for that, too effective at protecting you from the environment. But you can feel its texture, the strange roughness of frozen gas. It is unlike any frost on Earth, more like very fine snow than the crystalline ice you are used to. It crumbles under your touch, releasing tiny puffs of carbon dioxide gas that immediately dissipate in the thin air. It has no weight, almost no substance, just a fleeting presence that vanishes at the slightest pressure. The frost is growing. You watch as the black sand slowly turns gray, then white as the carbon dioxide accumulates. The process is slow, centimeters per hour, not the sudden transformation you might expect, but inexorable. By dawn, these dunes will be covered in a layer of dry ice several centimeters thick, a winter wonderland made of frozen atmosphere. The black sand sea will become a white sand sea, its dark surfaces hidden under a blanket of frozen gas. But it is not winter everywhere on Mars. At this moment, on other parts of the planet, the sun is shining, the temperature is above freezing, and the carbon dioxide is gas again. The Martian atmosphere is constantly cycling, freezing out at the poles and in the night, sublimating back into gas when the sun returns. It is a planetary breathing, a slow in and out of frozen air that has been going on for billions of years, since long before any life existed on Earth, since the time when this world still had rivers and lakes and possibly its own indigenous life. You stand up on the dune crest, feeling the frost crunch under your boots. The sound is different now, higher, sharper, more like the snow of Earth than the sand you have been walking on. The frozen carbon dioxide adds a new voice to the soundscape, a brittle crackle that accompanies every step. You walk a few meters along the crest, listening to the frost break beneath you, and you realize that you are hearing something almost no human has ever heard, the sound of dry ice underfoot on another world. The temperature continues to drop. Your instruments show minus 110 degrees Celsius now, and still falling. Minus 115. Minus 120. The frost thickens, the pressure drops, the atmosphere itself seems to shrink as more and more of it freezes onto the surface. By dawn, a significant fraction of the entire Martian atmosphere will be lying on the ground as frost, waiting for the sun to release it back into the sky. This is one of the most dramatic daily cycles on Mars. The temperatures swing from day to night can be more than 100 degrees Celsius, from a balmy, by Martian standards, minus 20 degrees during the day at the equator to a brutal minus 125 at night. No place on Earth experiences anything like this. No place on Earth could. The thin atmosphere simply cannot hold heat, cannot moderate the temperature, cannot protect the surface from the cold of space. When the sun sets on Mars, the heat radiates away almost instantly, and the planet plunges into a cold that would kill any unprotected life in seconds. And you are here in the middle of it, protected only by your suit. You look up at the stars. They seem brighter now, sharper, as if the freezing of the atmosphere has removed some final veil between you and the cosmos. Perhaps it has. With less gas between you and space, the starlight reaches you more directly, more purely. The Milky Way is a river of diamonds, so bright that you can almost feel its light on your face. The constellations are etched in fire, each star a point of unbearable brilliance. You can see colors in them that are invisible from Earth. The red of Betelgeuse, the blue of Rigel, the yellow of our own sun, visible only as a bright star among many from this distance. Below you, the frost continues to spread. The black sand dunes are becoming white sand dunes, their dark surfaces hidden under a layer of frozen carbon dioxide. The transformation is beautiful in its own way, a world turned upside down, dark becoming light, gas becoming solid, the familiar becoming strange. The crescent shapes of the Barkhan dunes are still visible, their curves softened by the frost, their sharp crests rounded into gentle ridges. The entire landscape has been transformed, made softer, more approachable, less alien. You kneel down and scrape away a patch of frost, revealing the black sand beneath. It is still there, unchanged, waiting for dawn. The frost is only a temporary visitor, a nightly transformation that will reverse itself when the sun returns. In a few hours, when the eastern sky begins to lighten, the carbon dioxide will begin to sublime, turning directly from solid back to gas, releasing the landscape from its frozen grip. The black sand will reappear, the dunes will resume their dark aspect, and Mars will return to its familiar red and black. But for now, the frost covers everything, unifying the landscape under a single pale blanket. The wind has died. With the atmosphere freezing out, the pressure gradients that drive the wind have weakened, and the air has become almost still. The ancient whisper of Mars has fallen silent, replaced by a deeper silence. The silence of a world holding its breath, waiting for dawn. Even the sand has stopped moving, its grains locked in place by the frost that binds them. The only sounds are the sounds you bring with you. Your breathing, your heartbeat, the quiet hum of your suit systems. You stand again and look toward the east. There is no sign of light yet. The sun is hours away, still hidden below the horizon, still on the other side of this world. But you know it will come. It always comes. And when it does, this frost will vanish, sublimating back into gas, returning to the thin atmosphere from which it came. The black sand will reappear, the wind will rise, and Mars will resume its daily cycle. But for now there is only the frost, the stars, the cold. You begin to walk again, moving deeper into the dune field. The frost crunches under your feet with each step, a sound like no other on Earth. It is the sound of a world's atmosphere turning solid, of gas becoming ground, of the daily death and rebirth of Mars. It is the sound of transformation, of change, of the endless cycles that shape this world. The dunes loom around you, their shapes softened by the frost. The sharp crests are now rounded, the steep slip faces gentled. The entire landscape has been made more approachable, less threatening, more like the snow-covered dunes of Earth's polar regions. For a few hours, Mars wears a mask of familiarity, a coat of white that could almost be snow on a winter night on Earth. But it is not snow. It is something else entirely, something that only exists on this world and on a few others in the outer solar system. It is frozen carbon dioxide, dry ice, the solid form of the gas that humans exhale with every breath. It is the same stuff that creates the dry ice fog in special effects, that keeps things cold in shipping, that sublimes away at room temperature. But here at minus 120 degrees, it is stable, permanent, a solid that will remain solid until the sun returns to warm it. You reach the base of a particularly large dune and stop to rest. The frost is thicker here, accumulated in the wind shadow of the dune. It lies in drifts, in waves, in patterns that mimic the sand beneath. You sit down on a drift of frozen atmosphere, feeling it compact under your weight, and you look up at the sky. The stars are still there, still bright, still countless. Phobos has risen again, racing across the sky, its shadow moving across the frost-covered landscape. You watch it pass, a dark shape against the stars, and you think about what it means to be here at this moment on this world. Phobos is only 22 kilometers across, one of the smallest moons in the solar system, yet it dominates the Martian night sky with its rapid motion and its strange, potato-shaped form. It will crash into Mars someday in about 50 million years, or perhaps it will be torn apart by tidal forces and form a ring around the planet. But tonight, it is just a dark blot moving across the stars, indifferent to its own fate. The frost around you is not static. Even as you watch, it is changing, sublimating in some places, accumulating in others, responding to the microclimates created by the dunes. The process is slow, invisible to the naked eye, but it is happening. Mars is never still. Even in the deepest cold of night, even when the wind has died and the atmosphere is freezing, the planet continues to change. You reach down and scoop up a handful of frost. It is light, almost weightless in your gloved hand, more like a gas than a solid. It consists of tiny crystals of frozen carbon dioxide, each one a perfect geometric form, each one a tiny sculpture created by the cold. You open your fingers and let it fall, watching it drift away in the still air, disappearing before it reaches the ground. The frost is so fine, so delicate, that it behaves almost like a fluid, flowing and dispersing with the slightest motion. This is the stuff of Martian nights. This is what happens when a world loses its atmosphere, when the air becomes so thin that it can freeze onto the ground. It is a reminder of how fragile this world is, how close it is to the vacuum of space, how different from the thick, warm, life-sustaining atmosphere of Earth. On Earth, the atmosphere is held in place by gravity and warmed by the sun, constantly circulating, constantly renewing itself. On Mars, the atmosphere is slowly bleeding away into space, frozen onto the ground each night, lost forever with each passing eon. You lie back on the frost drift, letting it support you. It is cold, colder than anything you have ever felt, colder than the sand was, colder than the air. Even through your suit, you can feel its chill, a deep, penetrating cold that seems to reach into your very bones. But your suit protects you as it always does. You are a bubble of earth in a Martian landscape, a tiny piece of your home world carried across millions of kilometers of space, and that bubble maintains its own temperature, its own atmosphere, its own reality. The frost beneath you crackles softly as it settles. The stars above you will slowly toward dawn. And you, lying in the frozen atmosphere of another world, feel a peace that you have never felt before. Think about what is happening around you. The very air is turning to ground. The gas that you would breathe if you could, that would sustain you if this world were different, is freezing onto the surface, becoming solid, becoming landscape. By dawn, the pressure will have dropped by several percent as more and more of the atmosphere condenses. And then, when the sun rises, it will all reverse. The frost will sublime, the pressure will rise, the wind will return. Mars will breathe again. But for now, there is only the frost, the stars, the cold. For now, there is only this moment, this place, this experience of a world in transformation. You close your eyes, letting the frost hold you. Behind your eyelids, the afterimage of the stars lingers, 1,000 points of light imprinted on your vision. You see them even in darkness, even with your eyes closed. They are part of you now, as much as the frost beneath you, as much as the cold around you. The night continues. The frost thickens. The stars wheel on. And you, lying on a drift of frozen atmosphere, continue to rest. This is the blue darkness, not blue in color, but blue in feeling, in the deep, cold peace that settles over you when you are alone on a foreign world, surrounded by the frozen breath of a planet. It is the darkness that comes before dawn, the darkness that holds the promise of light even as it seems eternal. It is the darkness of transformation, of change, of the endless cycles that shape all worlds. And you are part of that darkness now, part of that transformation, part of that cycle. You have come to Mars, and Mars has accepted you, has wrapped you in its frozen atmosphere, has made you part of its story. The frost continues to fall, silent and patient. The stars continue to wheel, eternal and unchanging. And you, lying on the black sand that has been hidden by frozen air, continue to rest, waiting for the dawn that will eventually come. There is a moment in the deepest part of the Martian night when the two moons meet in the sky. You have been lying on the frost-covered dune for hours, watching the stars wheel slowly overhead, feeling the cold deepen around you. The carbon dioxide frost has thickened into a layer several centimeters deep, transforming the black sand dunes into a landscape of pale gray and white. The wind has died to almost nothing, the atmosphere holding its breath in the deepest cold. The temperature hovers near -125 degrees Celsius. The coldest it will get this night, the point at which even carbon dioxide freezes from the air. And above you in the star-filled sky, two small moons are converging. Phobos is the faster of the two. It rises in the west and sets in the east, completing a full cycle in just over 4 hours, so fast that you can watch it move against the fixed stars. Its shape is irregular, more potato than sphere, a captured asteroid that has orbited Mars for billions of years. In the starlight, it appears as a dark blot, a moving shadow that eclipses the stars as it passes. Its surface is scarred with craters, the largest of which, Stickney, is nearly half the diameter of the Moon itself. The impact that created Stickney must have nearly shattered Phobos, must have sent shock waves through its entire body, must have been one of the most violent events in its long history. Deimos is slower, more distant. It takes more than 60 hours to complete an orbit, so slow that it seems almost stationary compared to its sibling. It is smaller than Phobos, less irregular, more like a tiny point of light than a distinct shape. Its surface is smoother, its craters buried under layers of dust, its appearance more like a smooth pebble than a battered asteroid. In the starry sky, you have to look carefully to distinguish it from the countless other points of light. But tonight they are converging. Phobos, in its rapid race across the sky, is approaching Deimos in its slow drift. In a few minutes they will align, not in an eclipse, not in an occultation, but in a conjunction, a moment when they appear side by side in the blackness above you. It is a common event in the Martian sky, happening regularly as the two moons pursue their separate orbits. But common does not mean insignificant. Common does not mean unworthy of attention. In a world where everything is strange, even the ordinary becomes extraordinary. You sit up on the dune, brushing frost from your suit. The cold has penetrated even your insulation now, a deep ache in your bones that never quite goes away. But you ignore it, focused on the sky, on the approaching convergence of the two moons. This is why you came here after all, not just for the science, not just for the exploration, but for moments like this. Moments when the universe reveals its geometry, its patterns, its hidden symmetries. Phobos moves visibly as you watch. In the time it takes you to draw a breath, it has shifted noticeably against the stars. Its dark shape creeps across the sky, covering and uncovering stars as it goes. Deimos seems frozen by comparison, its motion almost imperceptible. But they are moving, both of them, following the paths set for them by gravity billions of years ago, paths that have brought them to this exact configuration at this exact moment. The names come from Greek mythology, Phobos meaning fear, Deimos meaning terror, the twin sons of Ares, the god of war. They were discovered in 1877 by Asaph Hall, an American astronomer working at the Naval Observatory in Washington, D.C. He almost gave up his search, discouraged by weeks of failure, but his wife talked him into continuing. That night he found Deimos. A few nights later he found Phobos. They have been watched ever since by astronomers on Earth and by spacecraft orbiting Mars, their orbits measured and remeasured, their futures predicted with increasing accuracy. And those futures are grim. Phobos is spiraling inward, slowly but inexorably, toward the surface of Mars. Tidal forces are gradually slowing it, causing it to lose altitude at a rate of about 2 meters per century. In about 50 million years, it will either crash into the planet or be torn apart by tidal forces. forming a ring of debris around Mars that will last for millions of years before eventually raining down onto the surface. Deimos, by contrast, is spiraling outward, slowly escaping from its parent planet. In the far future, it will leave Mars entirely, becoming a tiny asteroid orbiting the Sun, a wanderer once again. But that is billions of years away. Tonight, they are together in the sky, two small moons converging over a frozen landscape. You watch as Phobos draws closer to Deimos. The gap between them shrinks visibly minute by minute. Soon they are separated by less than the width of your thumb held at arm's length, then less than the width of your finger. Then they are touching almost side by side in the blackness. And then for a moment they are aligned, Phobos and Deimos, fear and terror, together in the sky above Mars. It is not a dramatic event, not an eclipse or a transit, just a conjunction. But it feels significant, somehow, as if the two moons are acknowledging each other after their long, separate journeys. As if they are reminding each other that they are not alone, that they share this world, that their fates are intertwined even as they diverge. Below them, the frost-covered dunes stretch to the horizon. The black sand is hidden now, buried under centimeters of frozen carbon dioxide. The landscape is pale and ghostly, illuminated by starlight and the faint glow of the two moons. It looks like a world covered in snow, like a winter scene from Earth, but it is not snow. It is frozen atmosphere. The breath of Mars turns solid, the nightly transformation that reminds you how different this world is from your own. You stand up on the dune crest, facing the two moons. The frost crunches under your boots, the only sound in the still air. Above you, Phobos and Deimos hang together in the sky, their irregular shapes visible even without magnification. You raise your hand toward them as if you could touch them, as if you could reach across the millions of kilometers that separate you from these tiny worlds. It is a gesture of connection, of acknowledgement, of gratitude. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching over this world. Thank you for being part of this moment. And in that moment, you feel it, the profound isolation of this place. You are standing on Mars, under two moons, on a world that has no life, no sound, no movement except the wind and the frost. You are millions of kilometers from any other human being, from any other living thing, from any place that could sustain you if your suit failed. You are alone in a way that no human has ever been alone before, in a way that few humans will ever experience. But it is not a lonely feeling. It is something else, a sense of connection, of belonging, of being exactly where you should be. The isolation of Mars is not emptiness, it is presence. The absence of life is not a void, it is a space in which you can finally hear yourself think, finally feel yourself exist, finally understand what it means to be a conscious being in a vast and beautiful universe. You are alone, but you are not lonely. You are isolated, but you are connected to the stars, to the moons, to the frozen ground beneath your feet, to the vast cosmos of which you are a tiny but significant part. You lower your hand and look around. The dunes stretch away in every direction, their frost-covered surfaces glowing faintly in the combined light of two moons and a billion stars. The horizon is close, curved, reminding you that this world is small, smaller than Earth, smaller than it feels. Its circumference is only about half that of Earth, its surface area equal to the land area of Earth alone. You could walk around Mars given enough time and supplies. You could see every part of it, visit every region, explore every corner. It is a world that can be known in a way that Earth never can be. But you will not walk around Mars. You will stay here in this dune field under these two moons until dawn comes and the frost sublimes and the blue sky returns. And then you will return to your lander, to your mission, to the business of survival on a hostile world. But for now, there is only this moment, this conjunction, this meeting of moons over a frozen landscape. Phobos begins to pull away from Deimos, continuing its rapid race across the sky. In an hour, it will set in the east and Deimos will be alone again. In a few hours, dawn will come and the frost will vanish and the black sand will reappear. But for now, they are still close, still together, still hanging in the blackness above you. You sit down on the dune crest, facing the two moons. The frost is cold beneath you, but you no longer notice. You are focused on the sky, on the two small worlds that circle this planet, on the silent dance they have performed for billions of years. They have no consciousness, no awareness, no ability to appreciate their own beauty. But you do. You are the universe becoming aware of itself, the cosmos waking up to its own wonder. Think about what those moons have seen. They have watched Mars change from a warm, wet world to a cold, dry desert. They have seen its rivers dry up, its atmosphere thin, its water freeze or escape to space. They have witnessed impacts that carved craters, volcanic eruptions that built mountains, winds that shaped dunes. They have been here, circling, watching, for longer than any conscious being has existed anywhere in the universe. They have seen the rise and fall of countless geological features, the slow transformation of an entire world. And now they watch you, a tiny figure on a dune, a brief visitor from another world, a flicker of consciousness in the long night of geological time. They watch and they do not care because they are not alive. But you are alive and you care, and that makes all the difference. Your awareness gives meaning to their existence. Your consciousness makes their beauty real. The wind picks up slightly, a thin whisper across the dune crest. The frost stirs, tiny crystals lifting and drifting in the moving air. Phobos continues its rapid journey, pulling away from Deimos, heading toward the eastern horizon where it will set in less than an hour. The conjunction is over, the moment passed. But the memory of it remains, etched into your consciousness like the frost on the dunes. You lie back on the dune crest, letting the frost support you. The stars are still there, still bright, still countless. Deimos is alone now, a tiny point of light moving slowly among them. Phobos will rise again in a few hours, starting another rapid transit across the sky. The cycle continues as it always has, as it always will. The moons will continue their dance, the frost will continue to form and sublime, the wind will continue to blow. Mars will continue to be Mars, indifferent to your presence, unchanged by your visit. But you are changed. You will carry this moment with you for the rest of your life. The sight of two moons converging over a frozen landscape, the feeling of being alone on a foreign world, the knowledge that you are part of something vast and beautiful and incomprehensible. You will tell stories about this night, share images, try to convey what it felt like to be here. And you will fail because some things cannot be conveyed. Some things can only be experienced. The cold has become a part of you now, no longer something you feel but something you are. It is the cold of Mars, the cold of space, the cold of a world that has been dead for billions of years. But it is also the cold of peace, of stillness, of the deep rest that comes after long effort. You have traveled millions of kilometers to be here. You have descended through thin atmosphere, walked across black sand, watched blue sunsets and frozen frost. And now at the end of it all, you are simply here under two moons on a dune at rest. The frost beneath you crackles softly as it settles. The wind whispers its thin whisper. The stars continue their slow wheel. And you, lying on the black sand that has been hidden by frozen air, feel yourself drifting towards something that is not quite sleep but is not quite wakefulness either. It is a state of pure being, of existence without effort, of consciousness without thought. In this state you become aware of the vastness of time. The billions of years that Mars has existed, the billions more will exist. The eons during which these dunes formed, these moons orbited, this landscape was shaped. Your own life, measured against that scale, is less than an instant, a flicker, a breath, a moment that barely registers. And yet you are here in this instant experiencing it all. You are the universe's way of becoming aware of itself, of witnessing its own beauty, of feeling its own cold. The two moons continue their separate journeys. Phobos sets in the east, disappearing behind the horizon. Deimos drifts slowly after it, taking hours to follow. The sky is left to the stars, to the Milky Way, to the vast darkness between them. The frost continues to thicken, the cold continues to deepen, the night continues its slow march toward dawn. And you, lying on the dune, are left with the silence. It is not an empty silence. It is filled with the presence of this place, with the weight of the frost, the depth of the cold, the distance of the stars. It is filled with the memory of the blue sunset, the black sand, the thin wind. It is filled with the knowledge that you are here now on Mars under two moons in the deepest part of the night. You close your eyes. Behind your eyelids, the afterimage of the stars lingers. Phobos and Deimos, the Milky Way, the countless points of light that fill this sky. You see them even in darkness, even with your eyes closed. They are part of you now, as much as the frost beneath you, as much as the cold around you. The wind whispers one last time and falls silent. The frost stops crackling, settling into its final form. The stars continue their slow wheel, but you no longer watch them. You are watching something else now. The darkness behind your eyes, the silence within your mind, the peace that comes at the end of a long journey. Here, on this dune, under these moons, on this world, you have found what you were looking for. Not answers, not discoveries, not achievements. Just this, A moment of pure presence, of complete being, of absolute peace. The frost holds you. The cold embraces you. The stars watch over you. And you finally let go. You sleep. Not the troubled sleep of earth, with its dreams and disturbances, its anxieties and interruptions. A different kind of sleep, deep, dreamless, complete. The sleep of exhaustion after a long journey. The sleep of peace after a lifetime of striving. The sleep of one who has finally found their place in the universe. The frost continues to fall, silent and patient. The stars continue to wheel, eternal and unchanging. The two moons continue their separate orbits, one inward, one outward, following paths set billions of years ago. And you, lying on the black sand that has been hidden by frozen air, continue to sleep. This is the eternal observation, not of the moons watching you, but of you watching them, of your consciousness witnessing the universe, of your presence giving meaning to the vast and beautiful cosmos. You came to Mars seeking something, and you found it here, under two moons, on a frozen dune, in the deepest part of the night. The blue sunset is a memory. The black sand is hidden. The thin wind is silent. There is only the frost, the stars, the cold. There is only you sleeping under two moons at peace on a foreign world. And in that peace you are home.